Welcome to the Real Estate Is Show. Today I have one of our favorite agents at Rocket Lister, Kenny Klaus with the Klaus Team here. Welcome, Kenny.
Hey, man, what a treat! What a pleasure! I can't believe you send a limo to pick me up. That was just totally impressive. You never
were
stop.
the only person I will do that for. Nobody else.
Well, besides the check, it's impressive. So, and I can't believe you even took the time to write this all out for me. It's fantastic.
No,
so
this
you're
is
first class. So
this is great. So I've met you a few times. I know you've been a client of ours for years, but in the couple times I met you, the biggest thing that I've taken away from you is how well you do with people. Like, you are a people person at heart, right? I mean, your level of ability to kind of care for people, where does that come from? Like, I know that we're getting deep right off the bat, but I truly like.
Hey, let's dive in.
I want to know that.
You know, it's funny because when you for me in 2010, when I first came to KW, you do this disc profile thing and and then I'm like, oh, I don't know what all these things are. And you realize, like a 99i, and I'm going, okay, that makes sense. That's probably why I built a business the way I built it. Is my natural tendencies is I want everyone to get along. I want everyone to be happy, likable, those things. And so, for me, it was like, I just got to go meet more people, talk to people, and enjoy that. Sometimes too much, right? I talk too much because you get excited about what you're doing. I've had to learn to slow down and ask better questions because sometimes you can dominate the time of possession, and you have to be careful with that.
Who is your longest team member? And I define team member as agent, employee, whatever you want to call them. How long have they been with you, your longest person?
Well, really, my first hire, Stephanie, is just moved back to Wisconsin about almost going on 2 years now. So she was there right around 18 years. And really my first hire, I got lucky. I mean, people you go through that a lot of times for people. I just got lucky, but we had built relationship. She was at the title company and got to know her. I was still the FedEx guy dropping off escrows in my FedEx outfit during the day because I got it accepted last night, but I had to be at work in the morning. So,
yeah.
And then just built from there. We've got several people in the team now at 10, 12 years plus in that category. So we have people been there a long time. And then of course you have the kind of the new and the people who've kind of joined.
And you've got at least one that I know of, Ty Lusk.
Mm-hmm.
He's been around with you for how long?
Ty's a little over 5 years now.
Yeah, and I mean he's a mover and shaker himself. I mean that's one thing I've been impressed with you, Kenny, is you do a great job of building a good culture in your team. And this podcast really is geared towards top agents that are running teams. So I'd like to ask you some questions around that. How much do you think, maybe your high I or your culture, like what is it that helps keep a team sticky, right? That helps keep people there, retention?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, let's just call it what it is, right? It's, what's in it for them? What's in it for the agent? Are we bringing value for them? Are we helping them become better real estate agents, better professionals, better people? And to me, when you're pouring into people in all those capacities, it's not just about how much money can you make me or can I make you. At the end of the day, that's all a big part of the equation. I get it. Mm-hmm. But, we book clubs and, for me, personal growth is everything. I didn't know what I didn't know. And in 2005, I just was hustling. I was, Remax. I was just, having a good year. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I had a small team at that point. I was a terrible leader, terrible hirer, just out of necessity. And all the things that we did is you didn't ever expect to be in that position, to be a leader, to be having people on your team, and you become responsible, and it kind of shifts gears. So, as John Maxwell would say, you can't take someone somewhere you haven't been. And as I started to grow and realize this is a thing, and teams weren't a huge thing back then, it was like, okay, what do I need to start reading? What do I need to start going to? And for me, personal growth was everything, because a lot of people's last formal education might have been high school, might have been a little college, and yet they're out there trying to run businesses. And there's a lot of there's ceilings of achievement that you hit along the way because it's what you don't know that's costing you. And I would just out hustle, out work, do that and put in more hours if I needed to get up earlier, all those things. And you start realizing that's not sustainable over a lifetime. And when life changes, kids and family, and other things. And so it was really about, who do I need to become to help people achieve their goals within our organization? And we are far from perfect, man. I have had some, ups and downs and some challenges. I mean, the Phoenix market is crazy, is probably one of the craziest in the country. At the end of the day, though, it's just still me, and I still love people, and I still care. And I think that's important. I mean, I'm learning a lot along the way, but I think your likability factors, you read more, I'm in sales, and you read more, you start going, all right, I don't have any preconceived notion. I'm not trying to judge. I just want to get to know people a little bit. And my wife used to tease me early on, because she'd be like, who are we going out to dinner with this weekend? Oh, a listing appointment I did last week. And she's like, what? I'm like, oh, they're just cool people.
They were genuine relationships.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our friends today are truly from, the real estate client base over the years. Probably part of my problem, 3-hour listing appointments where I think they either submitted and it was just like, or we just were sitting around at that point just being friends, and it didn't bother me because I didn't
leave it until you get they sign.
And it wasn't even. But my point with that was it wasn't on purpose.
Yeah.
It's just we start talking, and next thing you know, it leads to this, and when you develop common interest or like kinds, or you get to know people at a level they feel heard, and people like to do business with people they like and trust, and you build trust over time. And likability is kind of how you present yourself. Some people are approachable, some aren't. They might still be very nice. You just got to get them out of their shell. And understanding the I was like, okay, that's why I don't really care to door knock or to prospect or do those things. I ran more of a marketing-based business where I'd send hopefully value out, and they would call. And then I get to go to their house, and they called me. It wasn't like and I realized that was my natural tendency, if you will.
You're big on farming, right? I mean, that's kind of one.
Yeah, geographic farming is what really, I didn't know what it was at the time. I just started doing it. I was actually a FedEx guy for 13 years, and here in the Valley, and I kind of realized through that process that, when I was first driving, you were what's called a swing driver, and you just took whoever was on vacation, sick, whatever. And talking about stressful, because everybody has their FedEx guy or gal that they love, but they know you don't deliver to the front, you deliver to the back, or this is the person that signs, or this is when they like this. Yeah. And so over time, I got my own route, and then you realize, well, this is where you build rapport. This is why being a swing driver is so tough, because they're regular drivers, their buddy. That's who they've connected with. They do it the way they need it done. And so I started realizing, well, why don't I just create a realtor route and just run a route based on hitting businesses, hitting houses, and it gave me a purpose all the time to get up every day and have something to be working on versus just hoping there's someone to go look at a house. Back then, internet online leads were not a big thing. When I started it, it was you had to get out and talk to people, and you had to get out and meet people. So I think that's extremely important for me, was understanding, well, if I just build and I have my own route, then I'm not driving all over the Valley. I'm not all over the place. I can be more efficient with my time. I can be better servant to the public, because I truly am a local market expert. I know the community. I know the schools. We interview the principal, the football coach. We just try to get real involved in. It's kind of like running for mayor, if you will, in that community. Is like, how do I become that? So when I get up every day, I'm not driving 45 minutes one way for an appointment and back. It was all hyper-local.
It's a combination of getting to know the community, but also when you send that far, is it postcards, is it letters? Like, what does it really look like? Yeah,
it's a newsletter. So since 2001, it's currently about 8 pages, goes out to about 23,000 homes every month, full color. And it's meant to kind of go under the radar of a real estate piece. It's, say 85209.com, your community connection, so that the consumer, when they're reading it, it makes it from the mailbox to the house, right? I want to get into the kitchen with them, so they're looking at it, and community garage sale, car show, stuff that's not necessarily mainstream. And it's gotten harder, I'm not going to lie, because people have technology now. You have it in your hand. You didn't used to. We used to have free ads on the back of the newsletter back in 01, and you're like, it was... Now it just doesn't even, we don't have it had it in probably a decade, but it was funny how that was a thing. And then all of a sudden Craigslist came along, and then, then it was offer up, and next thing you know, you're like, we don't need this anymore. And so I think one of the things for us, and kind of a thing that I get tagged with sometimes, is just, adapting to the markets. And I think that's been a real key in success, is saying, yeah, the fundamentals don't change, but the method can change sometimes, meaning, we went through a really tough REO and short sale market. And it was like, I don't want anything to do with this. I didn't have REO accounts. I didn't have, and I didn't want to do short sales. I didn't know anything about them. But I went, well, we either got to adapt and figure this out. And so next thing you know, we hired a short sale coordinator. We started doing classes, avoid foreclosure, had a CPA attorney. And I couldn't believe people were coming out. I thought, well, are they going to want to show their face in public? And instead, we were a trusted name by that point. And so, we had built an audience. And I think when you build an audience, whatever the message may change, but the audience is still the audience. So if they trust you.
It's interesting you brought that up, Kenny, because like I said, I've only met you a few times in person. And I think the 3 times have been in different markets. So I met you during the short sale foreclosure days. Mm-hmm. We had lunch at Pita Jungle, if you remember, at Val Vista and Baseline. And then, I met you again in a different market and again in a different market. And, the second market I met you in, you were heavy into the iBuyers. Mm-hmm. And then now it's a totally different market.
Totally different.
With all 3. So it's interesting that you brought up that you've been good at change, because that was one of the things I wanted to talk about today. I literally was about to talk about this, so I appreciate that. And that's, how do these real estate agents change today? So you changed back in short sales. You really figured out how to do the iBuyer thing really well. So like in today's market, what do they do to change and be successful?
Well, and here we are again in a market that none of us have experienced before, where you're landlocked for sellers, because who's going to sell if they've got a 3% rate? I mean, I was talking to a client the other day, we have listed for like 750, and I said, Mark, the difference is now is that buyer needs to be qualified for like 1.7 because with, rates were at 3, now they're at 7.5. It changes the game. And it was like, whoa, I guess you're right. I'm like, well, this is just why this has happened. And so you just have to know where the market is today and what percentage of buyers, where they're coming from. So we know first-time buyers, represent just under, arguably 35 to 40% of the market. You got death, divorce. The only people who are transacting, people who really have to. There's a little bit of investment. Our daughter, our 23-year-old, just bought her first house about a month ago. Crazy to feel, but I try to tell people too, sometimes like my 20-year-old who's 34 now, he bought his first house when he was 20, I should say, bought his first house. And I always tell people it's not so much the home ownership, like the tax side or that, it's who he became as a person. That was so cool to watch, because he grew up very quick, because all of a sudden it's like, it's my house. Like, get your stuff off that. Don't touch this. Do this. But it gave him
this. That was a happy moment as a dad.
Like, it was so cool, and it was so exciting for him. But I said, now you go somewhere and you fill out a form, and it's not rent, you own. Yeah. And it just gave him a sense of pride. And I said, someday we'll talk about this equity stuff and this stuff. And now he's married. She's a nurse. They got 2 boys. Like, beautiful new house.
I'm gonna go to my kid's house. Leave all the cabinet doors open.
Yes.
I'm gonna leave all the doors open, all the lights on.
Like that TikTok video. You gotta drink out of the milk and put it back. The empty box back in the pantry.
They're getting it all.
Oh yeah. No, it's fun. And now we have 5 grandkids, which is the reward for not killing our kids. So now we get the upside, where you get to do all that stuff through them to get back at their parents too, of course. So got to have some fun with it, right?
You're known in town for, you probably don't know what I'm about to say, but you're known in town for being a really good father. What advice do you have for, I grew up with a mom in real estate and a dad in a different type of real estate. And it's not a 9 to 5, it's not an 8 to 5, right? So what advice do you have for those fathers out there that still want to be a good father? And I truly don't believe that there's a work-life balance, right? Balance is the wrong word.
It's a myth, right?
Yeah, but like you could still be a good father and be a successful real estate agent. So what does that look like, as you raise your kids? Well,
one thing I heard somewhat recently, and it's just stuck with me, and I've tried to get kind of people like, what do you hear when I say this? But was someone had shared with me the idea of, go build a life and the business will come. And I've heard a lot of things, and that one just hit me for some reason different. It was like, too many of us are like, we got to work all day, got to do this. I can't stop, which was me. I was like, honey, just give me, I wake up every day unemployed. Like, I got to go to work. I got to figure this out. And when you're on the rise, it's like, you don't know if tomorrow is going to produce anything. So there was that mindset for years. And like 7, 8 years in, she's like, okay, how long are we going to be saying this?
You start negotiating how much time is left. Yeah.
But the idea of go build a life and the business will follow is really, it's changed a lot of the kind of what some of the stuff we're doing right now internally, which is, let's create communities within our brand. So someone, like I'm into side by sides and writing. We have that community, our silver group, our senior community, like just different communities where, agents have a purpose and something they're moving towards. Because I think it's extremely important, and it gives you activities and things to do while you're building. But the point is, like, well, what do you enjoy doing? Well, can you create a community around that? Why not do something you enjoy doing first before doing something you have? If you don't like going to network group meetings, then maybe you should create your own then, or that you have control, or maybe that's completely off the table. It's something else. But I think that building that life part is important, and a lot of things that I've learned. I had 2 older kids, 2 younger kids, so there was about a 10-year gap in there, and so it really, between the two, you learn a lot from the first, how fast it all goes. Like we all say it, our parents said it. For whatever reason, we don't listen to wisdom. We got to go figure it out on our own. And
for most of us are living day to day. And there's a good analogy there. Like most humans live day to day with paycheck to paycheck, but a lot of people live day to day with time to time.
Yes.
Like they don't enjoy the moment. They're so worried about tomorrow and not enjoying the moment now, and living in this day-to-day world where they can't plan a life that gives them the life they want.
Yeah, and just being present, it's difficult because there's always something. Your phone's always near, and you can always get access. There's always something you can be doing. And it's like sometimes you get on the plane and the Wi-Fi doesn't work, and you're just like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And I go, yes, I have a chance. I don't have to worry about this stuff for 2 hours, 3 hours. I can't do anything about it. Yeah. But it is funny how the world has changed. And I think, our number one asset's our time, right? And once we give it to people, like sitting here today, once it's given, I can't get it back. It's in the past, and we learn. So, where you spend your time, learning to say no, which is a sentence, you just no, period. That's a full sentence, is very difficult to people pleasers like myself who want to make everyone happy. But you start realizing, that it doesn't really matter in the end, and stuff doesn't matter either. Money's good for the good it can do, and it can create opportunities and things for others and some stability and stuff. But the chase of that, and then to die and not have a relationship with your kids or those things, and I messed that up in some ways. I mean, I was that guy. I was busy. I was working a lot. I was what pivoted my career was I got forced to go to a Brian Buffini event here in the Valley called the Turning Point back then. And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm busy. I'm not going. And I'm like, fine. They're like, well, I paid for it. I'm like, you don't need to pay for it. Like, you can't afford that. But I went. And I just remember going, holy cow, like, look at all these people. And the stuff they're saying, like, I don't know this stuff. I'm not learning at the company I'm at. And I literally booked a room, stayed the night, in the same clothes, didn't bring anything. Just said, I got to be in the moment here. And then I went the next day, and the next month we went to Monterey, California. She went just to learn, because he made a comment at one point. He's like, I'm at my kid's soccer game, and I'm the guy on the phone up and down the sidelines. And I'm like, quit looking at me, man. I'm like, okay, I get it. And, of course, he's talking to the audience, but it made me realize, I wasn't present even back then, back in the old Motorola flip phone days, right? It was bad because you just figured everything was urgent. And I learned some things.
And you justified it saying, once I close this deal, we'll be able to spend time together.
Hey, I'm not partying at the bar all night, honey. Like, I'm working, I'm doing this. And so you start to tell yourself this, but you realize kids in that, they don't care. They just want your time. And, it's funny. I get emotional. So sometimes if I do, I can't help it. It's just, my mom gave it to me and it's in there. But funny story, just recently, my dad's always said, when we were younger, Cats in the Cradle song. And I was like, okay, and it's emotional to him, like, whatever. Well, and I just started listening to it the other day, and I'm like, I get teared up right now thinking about it, like, wow, that is the cycle of life. I mean, when you listen to that song, and it's an oldie, Ricky Skaggs or something, but I was like, no wonder why, I wished I would have paid more attention to what he was saying then and heard it different, because I can't tell you how many times that, hey, let's go pheasant hunt, let's go do this, and I'm busy, I can't, and everything else was a priority, and he had moved out of state, but you look back, you can't get that back. My mom has Alzheimer's, she's 77, she's beautiful, tiny little thing, but mentally gone. It's been about 7 years now, and it's just gotten worse, and you just go, that's it, the game, that ride is over, and you start going to yourself like, man, one less Friday night out, and sat and watched Cops with her, what would that mean today? And so for me, I think it's just really, when you talk about this evolution now.
Do they still have that Cops? I watched that as growing up.
I know that during
that was a great show.
It was, I think they call it something else now, but point is that it's that time, right? Yeah. And when we give it to people is when it's the most meaningful. And that's why I think sometimes this world today is everyone's getting so distanced because of COVID was kind of, it was a reality, but it was also an excuse now in some cases to not get back together. And to me, I need that. Like I flourish around others. I like partnering with people and succeeding together. I'm not looking to have it all. I want, how do we win together and grow? And I think that as you get older, I'm 52 now, you start looking at wisdom and start going, okay, I need to listen to some of these things. I need to start reading and self-educating, which is really what started in 2005. It was business books, leadership, that stuff. And now it's kind of the other end. It's, wealth building, financials, taxes, understanding how all that stuff works. Because so many of us just complain about stuff and we really don't know what we're even complaining about because everyone else is. And they're the same people who haven't taken the time to learn more. But when you learn about taxes, you learn about all the strategies available, why wealth is built by wealthy people, because they know how to use the tools. A lot of us didn't have access or understand it. And so it becomes an excuse, a crutch, versus there's a ton of books, podcasts, there's stuff you can listen to. With our younger two, we have a cabin up in Heber, and kind of the thing was from our house to Payson, we had to listen to something good. And so it'd be Lou Holt, Zig Ziglar, like something good. Back in then it was CDs, of course. And so, but I laugh now because it was like, I always wanted to teach them, like, we got to put in the good, and then from there to the cabin, screw off, play your games, watch a movie, whatever you want to do. But you have to do the work first, and then you earn the right to screw off. Too many people screw off, and I'll get to it later, and then they never get to it. And I think that your personal growth is if you're your number one asset, then how you grow determines everything.
Well, I want to stay on the dad thing for a little bit. What advice do you have to fathers out there and our mothers, but parents out there that are struggling with kids that aren't motivated, that are struggling to a kid's trying to find their way, a kid's trying to. You want them to be something that they're not right now. They may be that someday, right? You see them, you see the potential in them, but they're struggling getting there.
I would love to hear my own answer to this because it's a struggle. It really is. And because today's world, a lot of the kids socially, it's just a different life than we were used to. If me and you had a problem at recess, we had a problem, we got it over with. But we weren't texting and posting all night, and the next morning you wake up and people are tagging and all the crap that goes on with it. You just dealt with it. And I think that conflict is part of life. It's where growth comes from. And if you don't like the video game right now, you just reset it, shut it off. If you don't like the conversation, you just shut it off. You're not having to challenge anything.
With virtual reality, you go to a different room with different virtual people.
100%. And that becomes your friends, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not real relationships. Yeah. And as you get older, your circle typically gets smaller. And like I've told my kids, you're going to outgrow some relationships over time. It doesn't mean anyone's bad or good or you're better or they're worse. Like, it's not about that. There's just certain people who are going to be going in a direction that not where you want your life to go. The problem is their direction is usually the easiest direction as far as less work and accountability, where the other is a little more work, but then they're working for you someday if you do it right? And I mean, humbly. I mean, but so I think that I don't know, and it's a struggle I've been having currently, and I think my answer to that would be sometimes you just have to introduce them to people that you may know in your world or that they may build a relationship and look up to, and all of a sudden, it's like parenting, right? If you said, hey, Kenny, tell my kids this, they would come home and go, Dad, Kenny said this. And you're like, I've been telling you that for 3 years. I just don't hear it, right?
Yeah.
We all have been through it. I think for me, patience is tough to watch maturity happen and realize that everyone isn't me or you, or we're not all wired the same. And yet love them, support them, listen, ask questions. But there still has to be accountability. There's still fundamental things. But for me right now, it's really the focus on time. Like spending time together. Like we're literally leaving to go to an F1 race in 2 days, and it's 5 days together with my youngest, and it's just like we're just going to do it. Like there's business isn't fantastic right now. The world there's all these excuses, but it's the time I'm living in. I've got to deal with it, and so we're just going to go have. And I'm hoping the outcome is amazing, and we spend enough time together, sharing one hotel room, so there's no hiding that. We'll have some opportunities to connect.
Conversations, yeah.
And yet sometimes, I always have to go, before I complain about why they are that way, I've got to look in the mirror, because it usually starts right there, right? But so many people spend so much time looking out the window instead of in the mirror and going, the change starts here. Am I doing everything I can? Am I adapting to what he likes, not necessarily what I like? And if I can start doing things that he likes, will he eventually try what I like? But I will say...
Are you religious at all?
I mean, I was Catholic grade school, high school.
You believe in God?
Yes.
You know, I try to look at that perspective. I mean, he has a perfect love, right? And, you know, trying to, whether you're religious or not, I think most people believe in love. And trying to have that same kind of love for your child where you love them through everything is really, really hard. I have an 11-year-old and I struggle with it.
Right.
So I imagine it gets harder when they're 18, 19, 20, and there's some big, like, I mean, those decisions between 18 and 25 will determine the rest of your life sometimes.
They're everything. It's the most, it's, you know, it's some of the most change, because the influence is still from friends, influence from other siblings maybe that are growing up and having whatever's going on. Yeah. You just have to realize everyone's different, but that doesn't mean that you just kiss their butt and play the game. Like, you still have to have accountability. There's still standards that need to be done. And when they're not doing that, well, then there's going to be conflict. If you're doing that and you're maturing at a pace, but you're moving in the right direction, you know, and they're doing some of the right things, or a lot of the right things. And so really, when I look back, I really can't complain. It's just, I look back and go, did I give them as much time 5 years ago, 8 years ago, when I could have been a better probably friend and mentor and that? Or was I so busy working, and, you know, it was kind of Kenny this and Kenny that type thing as you're growing up? And yeah, there's definitely some of that in there, not purposely, but you look up and it's like, holy cow, they're this old now. And I think, you know, going back earlier when I said we have that gap in age, I had the luxury of that. I'll call it a luxury because it gave me an awareness opportunity to go, wait a minute, now these kids got boyfriends and girlfriends, and next thing you know, they've got spouses, and then they got kids, and you start getting less and less and less of their time. And I went, man, I've got to spend more time and do more of this with these guys. And that's when we bought our cabin. It was like, we're just going to create legacy. We're going to go up there, use it, have memories, which now we do. We have all these pictures and memories. And, you know, at the end of life, that's all you have is a collection of memories. And if you're not investing in memories and look at it as an investment with your family, and you're just stocking money and cash for someday, health gets in the way, life gets in the way. Like, go do things now that you can and spend that time with them, because they'll have it forever. I mean, most of us, if we sat back and said, think of something from your childhood, a trip, somewhere you went, something you did. I mean, it's like crystal clear. Like, I could think of like 2 or 3 right like that are like from when I was a kid, and yet they're crystal clear in here. It's funny how those things get saved and we index those as like, that was a good one. That one pulls up when I think of that. And I think too many of us are, you know, accumulating stuff sometimes, especially in today's world. And I'm at fault with it at times with Amazon. It makes it too damn easy. You know, I heard a strategy a couple weeks ago, like, put it in your cart, and the next morning or 48 hours, whatever you need to do, if you still want it, then buy it. But a lot of it's such impulse stuff that they make it so easy now. I mean, you don't have to get up and go get fast food anymore. It's so fast, you can get it delivered to your house. And those things I, you know, still struggle with. But I just think that, you know, everyone's after our time and giving our time to the people that matter most. And I look sometimes and I go, there's my day, and I gave time to these people who really, it just filled the day. It didn't grow the day. So you can get home and take that walk with your family or do this. And, you know, one of the guys I read, he's like, you know, if you need to, you know, look at your time. Do you need to hire a house cleaner to buy that hour and a half back? Because that way you could go take your, you know, kids to the park and go fishing.
And money solves some of those issues.
And money
right?
can do those things, right? Landscape, pool, whatever things that you can do that may take. Now, some things you may enjoy. I'm just saying the most important time, you've got to figure out, I built some, say you stored some money, you've been saving. Maybe I need to do this so that we can go spend this time together with no regrets and just truly enjoy it. Because, you know, there's a Bonnie, I forget, Nyad that wrote the 5 Regrets of the Dying. And when you hear that stuff, I've heard her twice now in person, and you're just like, it hits you. It's pretty dang humbling. Like, these are people who are on their deathbed, have nothing to.
What are some of the biggest regrets people have?
Well, I mean, one is, you know, wished I would have lived life on my terms. Wish I would have spent more time with family and friends. You know, wishing that I, you know, it's all relative around having more choice in my own life versus feeling like my life was chose for me. And for a lot of people, it was that, we've saved, and now my significant other gets Alzheimer's, for example. And we missed the cruise we could have taken at this point in our life. We could have done this. And when you really think about, when you're young, you have health and you don't have any money. And then you get in those middle years when you're still healthy, you're starting to accumulate some money, but you're trying to build something so you don't have
time.
Then you get towards the back half of life, say the third period, and all of a sudden you have money and some freedom, but you don't have health anymore. So there's things that you're not going to water ski, say at 90 or 80 or whatever, but could you do it now if you wanted to? Well, do it now. Get it, go get the boat if you need to. Go do it, whatever you enjoy. Because there's times in our lives when we can do those things and other times we just can't. And I'm a saver. I'm very frugal, last house for 21 years.
You just got a new home, right?
We just built a house, and it's still a little uncomfortable for us because it's kind of out of our norm. But
I'm surprised you stayed married through it. Well, it's hard to stay married through building a house.
Try that and having a restaurant burned down and all that going on at the same time. It was a ton of fun. And COVID to throw it in there with trades and all that fun. But you know what? We just did it together. I think the key to any relationship, right, is communication. And if you build a communication system, where everybody feels heard and valued, and you're not afraid to communicate. Because I'm not going to go talk about her to someone else if I haven't talked to her about it. And, kind of stay in curiosity and, what's got you. Because a lot of times what's on the surface isn't what's really in there. There's something else. A lot of times it's not even related to anything you did. It's just something that's in there, but you're the easy target. So I think communication, but we could say that about any relationship, right? If we don't communicate well with you, we're not going to get the job we need done. And if we have a bad experience, that's communication's even more important. Hey, take ownership, apologize. We did this, let's fix it.
So I'd like to bring some of what we talked about back to, the agent. One thing that I've always said is, you mentioned it earlier when you were very first started, you wake up a broke entrepreneur. You said something to that at the very beginning of our
We
podcast.
wake up every day unemployed, yep.
Unemployed, yeah. And you truly are an entrepreneur. Now, you might have, your brokerage support or some support here, but for the most part, most real estate agents are 100% commission, if not all, right? And most of them live by how well they do. Now, some of them rely on leads to live. I've always thought that real estate agents wear too many hats too often. And, I've taught this kind of quadrant thing, and I didn't come up with this, but, I don't remember who taught it to me. But the goal is to get to the quadrant where you love what you're doing and you're really good at it. And get away from the things that you hate doing that you're not good at. What advice do you have for real estate agents, how do they offboard some of the stuff they shouldn't be doing and focus on the things they are? What have you seen? You've had a lot of experience, seen people come and go. Give me some of your advice there.
Well, I think, first of all, again, like we said earlier, you can't take someone somewhere you haven't been. So you've got to learn leadership skills. And so how do you how do you get people to do what you want them to do and actually want to do it and enjoy to do it? And running disc profiles or different, personality traits helps you understand. You go in my office, everyone has their disc in front. So I know if I'm going in to talk to you and you're a high I, well, then I need, how was your weekend? How was this? How's the kids? And, you go into someone who's a D, it's like throw meat in the cage and get out of there, right? Because they're going to get her done type people, and they're going to run you over and not even realize it, not on purpose. It's just how they're wired.
That's me.
And so once you understand, and I feel like I can flip between the D and I, is, you want to get stuff done, but do it respectfully and nicely. I think the key is, we hired our first person at the time, let's call it $45,000 salary. So it wasn't that much different than what I was making at FedEx. And I remember my wife going, "Are you sure we can do this?" And I'm like, "I'm not sure, but I can't keep going the way I'm going."
What was their role?
Assistant, transaction, like the paperwork. Because
that seems to be one of the...
When you talk about quadrants, I didn't get excited to go do that. If someone called and wanted to go look at houses or their list, or I could handle that all day long. It was getting home from all that and then going, I got to do all this paperwork. And just didn't love it, or returning calls to keep things moving. And so I think that a lot of people start with the buyer's agent first, an agent to support because they have lead overflow, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then someone kind of managing it. And what I had to learn is I'm going to be building a business here, and it's not easy. The responsibility falls on me. We have a bad month, a bad year. What's going to happen? So we lived very frugally and took money off the table to keep reinvesting into the business. And people are your number one capital. So investing in people, and I can remember the first hire was like, okay, we're gonna take we're going to take $45,000 off the income this year to pay this person, let alone payroll tax and all the other blah, blah, blah. But am I willing to make that much less if everything just stayed exactly the same? And the answer was, yeah, I could live like that because I would buy my time back. And for me, leverage is buying your time back so that you can go do those other things. It doesn't mean about commitment to your responsibilities. And that's what started kind of a leverage process. For me, it was like, okay, who can I get to do that? Who can I get to do that so that I can be in my best space? And the way our team runs today, salespeople are just doing sales activities. I mean, they're not doing anything else unless they choose to, but it's not. We want systems and models that run that part of the business so that they can talk to more people, meet more people, because at the end of the day, we're in the people business. You're in the people business.
I've been having so much fun on this podcast. I almost forgot to ask you what real estate is to you. We almost got to the end of the podcast, and I almost forgot to ask you because I've had so much fun talking to you. So what did you come up with, Kenny? What is real estate is what to Kenny?
To me, it's changed over the years, but I would say, looking back now, it's just been a vehicle to fund the perfect life or to fund the life that I wanted. I didn't want it to be my identity. I remember thinking back like, man, I don't want my tombstone to say he was a great realtor, right? That's not necessarily a legacy or an accomplishment. That's what I did to now create opportunity to go share with others, to teach this some of the stuff we talked about earlier. We're building a little class around right now to help people look at the world a little bit differently, because so many people they just follow the herd and they just do what their parents did and they did and they did. And there's some of that's fantastic. There's a lot of fundamentals, but there's also changes. Things are different. And so to me, real estate it's such a cool business with so many different avenues in it. To your point earlier, you can end up with a lot of hats on and be good at none, right? For when I started farming, it was just like, that was my one thing. I'm just staying with that to build a foundation. And so I think finding a niche that you believe in and just going all in on it, if you believe in it and you enjoy it, and then, look up in a year or two. Don't quit after 3 months or 6 months, because you have to, time on task and you get better at what you're doing. So to me, it was a vehicle. It's not meant to be like my number one source of income is not real estate commissions.
So is it fair to say real estate is to fund the life you want?
Yeah, to fund the perfect life, to fund the life that you want. Yes, perfect's different for everyone. So the life that you want, which made me, look, I want to be retired, or I want to, only work this much, or I want to work this much. Some people, work's not the challenge. Like, Gary Keller Williams, I look at him like, I would have mic dropped a long time ago and been out of there. But he does buy his time back. He does do things, but he's also accountable. So it can be done. It just, what matters to you, not what matters to everybody else. Because going back to that 5 regrets, live the life that I want to live on my terms with my choice. And how many people can't take a 3-day weekend because of a job situation, or because they can't afford to just take that day unpaid? That becomes a lot of times it's a budget issue, it's a savings issue, it's a discipline issue. But for me, it was just as we started building, it was like, okay, we got to buy investment. I want to find a way to not have to work for my money, but have my money work for me. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a short 10-year path to success, right? It's like people look up and it's like, it's been 10 years. We built that, and now all this stuff's paid off, and it's just producing. And so you get in a time like this in the market where you're like, man, it sucks, like making nothing or writing a check just to keep. I got a big operation to keep it going, but I don't want to quit on my people. And the truth of it is that it's part of leadership. You get to ride the highs, but you got to be there in the lows. Like, you're the captain. You got to be there. And so to me, I think it's just just consistency in what you're doing. Constantly trying to get better. I see so many people that in front of the curtain and behind the curtain doesn't line up, what they're saying and what they're doing. Especially in our industry where we'll put anybody on stage sometimes without any P&L or anything to go, is that really what's happening? Or because they had a moment in the market, but there wasn't consistency over 5 years, 10 years, through an up and a down market, which is where we're going to see a lot of changes in our industry in the next 6 to 12 months, because I don't think this is a quick turnaround. And we're going to be in this for a while with these rates, because we just have two completely differing opinions. One's reality and the other's the government. So, you're dealing with that. And a lot of people didn't plan for rainy days and second jobs and all those things, which, really can hurt our industry, because technology has brought a lot of value. It's taken some stuff too. But if you don't understand it all and have a menu of services to provide for your client that fits their interest. It'd be no different if you came to one of our restaurants and you were like, hey, let me see the menu. And I'm like, yeah, it's like In-N-Out burger. You get a burger or fries and that's it. How would you come there? But you want your burger a certain way and someone else wants wings and someone else wants a salad. That's kind of, I think the evolution of technology has created more tools for us than we've ever had. Most agents just run away from and not at them. And I've just chose to run at that stuff. And my big aha going back a while back, what we were talking about was, the REO days, I kind of missed that. And I was like, how did I miss that? Now it's here. Short sales, anybody could get after. I went, when the iBuyer thing came, I just went, at first I was kind of like everyone, like, leave me alone, quit sending me these crappy offers. And then all of a sudden it was like, I can understand this because it's gaining some momentum. And I went and had lunch with one of them for a couple hours and I went, this is a tool in my toolbox. I need to be using this. And changed a lot for a long time, helped a lot of clients with better, different decisions and more transparency for them. Like, I'll show you everything that's out there. I may make less and it maybe this, but the reality of it is in your best interest. And that's how you earn that trust and that loyalty that I'm going to do the right thing. Money's not the motivator. It's good service consistently. Money just becomes a byproduct of doing those things. Like, I went from nothing wrong with Remax, but Remax to KW was like, well, can we see your business plan? Can we see your P&L? And can we see this? And I'm like, man, I'll tell you, I spend less than I make. That's my P&L. Like we just put as much away and pay off as much debt as we could. And it's like, okay, I got to start learning to run a business. And it's important. You have to know those things. It just wasn't my nature. My C is irrelevant on the disc.
And there's a transition every real estate agent should make from, I think that kind of the baby step is, you're making less than you're making more than you spend. But the next step is the P&L. But the real next step that most agents need to transition into is looking at your balance sheet and building up a net worth and assets. And I think that's where so many real estate agents that even come on this show are so focused on their GCI or whatever that that term is and how much income they make a year. And my question is always, well, what's your balance sheet look like? You make all the income in the world, but what does your balance sheet look like?
Well, and Gary changed that for a while with people going on stages. Like, you got to send a P&L before you can go up there. That was the vision. It was like, because we don't want someone talking on stage that life's great, but they're spending as much as they're making, but they got billboards and radio and TV and it looks so flashy, but everything that's coming in is going out. And if there's one little breakdown in that system, you're out. I mean, you signed some contracts, you're doing some things, and so I think
what's great about having assets is you can fall back on assets.
You can fall back on that. You've got and diversity in that, and so. But I think that's the key. Is a lot of people we got into real estate sales and just I'll try this, and all of a sudden for some it worked, and it's like, are you going to keep trying it, or are you going to commit to this now and like get better as a person? Because everybody you talk to needs a roof, whether they're renting or buying or selling. There's everybody. So you got to get better skill sets, and it's the things we don't learn or we get so used to, whether they're raised or things. The words you use matter, how you use them matter. Open-ended questions, things to get people engaged. In sales, part of the problem is we just go in and blah 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 all over everyone, and I'm spokesperson for that. I mean, I did it for years. I was so excited to be there and show them all the stuff I'm going to do for them, and you realize you leave and you're like, I don't know if they asked any questions or they got to. It's like, no, everything's fine. Just get out of here. You've been here long enough. The point was I started realizing like, well, wait a minute. We know all the answers or most of the answers. We just don't know the questions. And so I had to change our listing presentation and start out right away with a question to get them to start talking earlier. Because if you know them a little bit different, but still, there's still a system. But a lot of times you're knocking at a door. You still need to
understand what their goals are. Where are they hoping to end up after this? I mean, there's a lot of great questions to
It's
ask.
the truth. And the problem is we just assume we're going to tell them, oh, I do virtual tours. I do this. And it's like, me too, me too. They've heard that from everyone. So then it's just down to what's your fee. But when you get in and you find out more about them, you ask questions, they feel heard and they feel like you care. And I think the key term in that is, you need to avoid the time of possession. They need to have the time of possession in their favor, meaning that you leave and they're like, man, he's a great conversationalist. And you're like, and I hardly even talked. But they feel heard because they talked, even though they don't see it that way. So I think it's skill set that comes over time and being willing to learn. When you're driving around in your car in the valley, sometimes it sucks. Traffic's this and that. I'm two different people. If I got a podcast on, I'm cool driving, no rush, get home when I get home. Man, I'm listening to music or radio, and so I'm not distracted, like tuned in. It's like, who cut me off? You know, if I'm going to cut in on this car, it'll save me, you know, half a second. You know, like it's funny how your emotions control so much of what you do, and people aren't always aware of it's their emotions and how they see a situation. You can have the same situation, and we could see it two different ways. You know, picture I'm driving down the freeway and someone, you know, flies and cuts me off. And so I'm, you know, on their ass and honking and this, and I pull up next to them and I look over and the mom's in the back seat giving the kid CPR. And now you're like, get in front of them and clear the damn highway. I got to get them to the hospital. The same situation can be viewed two different ways. And it's all, we judge, right? It's how our brain's wired. Your front of your brain's called your amygdala, and it's like your fight or flight.
Yeah.
You know, caveman came out back in the day. It was like, we got to go. We either got to fight or we got to run, and that's how your brain. So how do you get through that? Because it's naturally going to defend you. It's just how it is. And so if someone does something, you get defensive. And I've had to learn to really slow that down. And I'm far from perfect at it, but it's awareness to it is the first step.
You're one of the best I know, and we appreciate you having you as a client of Rocket Lister. I know you've been with us.
OG, man.
OG, right? Since day one.
Yep, since the beginning. Yep.
Well, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Definitely. Well, thanks for doing it and pouring back into, you know, your people too. And I look forward to hearing more of this stuff because, again, we got to dedicate a little bit more time a lot of times to our own personal growth before we can go help anyone else. And I hate to use the cliche with the airplane, right? But when the oxygen mask drops, you know, put yours on first so that you can help others. Yeah. You've got to get right first to be able to help other people.
Well, lots of value today. Thanks, Kenny.
You're very welcome. Thank you.